Lisa Turner was the picture of suburban perfection. Living in Pineville, North Carolina, an affluent suburb of Charlotte, she appeared to lead a life many envied. At 45, Lisa was a stay-at-home mom devoted to her two teenage daughters, Carmel, 17, and Melisha, 14. She filled her days with a variety of activities, coordinating school events, singing in her church choir, and maintaining her beautiful home, a two-story colonial-style house surrounded by lush greenery. Her husband, Rob Turner, a successful 48-year-old corporate lawyer, provided well for the family, but was often away due to his demanding job. Lisa was known in the community for her warm demeanor, effortless charm, and willingness to help others. She was the kind of woman who remembered birthdays, baked cookies for neighborhood gatherings, and lent a shoulder to cry on when needed. Despite her outward composure, Lisa privately struggled with feelings of loneliness and dissatisfaction. Her marriage had lost its spark, becoming more about shared responsibilities than intimacy. Rob's frequent business trips left her feeling isolated, and though she loved her daughters deeply, Lisa often felt her own desires and needs were overshadowed by the roles she had taken on. Her smile, though radiant, began to feel like a mask concealing a growing emptiness inside her. Lisa Turner's affair with Jason Brace Collins was born out of emotional longing and the intoxicating allure of forbidden connection. It began during a chance encounter one summer evening when Jason offered to help Lisa carry groceries into her house. Grateful for his assistance and charmed by his youthful energy, Lisa invited Jason to stay for a glass of lemonade. Their conversation was surprisingly engaging, spanning everything from books to future aspirations. Over time, Jason became a frequent visitor. He mowed the Turners' lawn, helped Lisa with household repairs, and even tutored her younger daughter in math. Lisa began to look forward to Jason's visits, her days brightened by his youthful enthusiasm and unreserved admiration. Jason, on the other hand, saw Lisa as someone who understood him in ways others did not. What started as innocent companionship quickly evolved into something deeper. Their shared smiles turned into lingering glances, and stolen moments turned into secret rendezvous. Lisa was acutely aware of the risks, yet she couldn't resist the passion Jason stirred in her. For Jason, the affair was a consuming infatuation. He became deeply attached, often texting Lisa at odd hours and leaving small gifts for her at her doorstep. Lisa's diary became her confidant, capturing her excitement, guilt, and growing unease. In one entry, she wrote, "Jason makes me feel alive, but I know this cannot last. He's a boy playing with fire, and I'm the matchstick. I must end this before someone gets burned." The diary reflected her internal battle, torn between the thrill of the affair and her commitment to her family. It was a typical spring day when Rob Turner returned home early from his business trip. He had been in and out of town frequently for work, and it was unusual for him to be back before dusk. But as he entered the front door of his home, everything felt eerily quiet, far too quiet for a house that was usually bustling with life. The faint smell of cleaning products lingered in the air, and there were no sounds of his daughters playing or his wife preparing dinner. Rob's first instinct was to check the living room, but when he moved toward the kitchen, he was hit with a shocking sight that would haunt him for the rest of his life. His wife, Lisa, sprawled lifeless on the floor. Her once beautiful face was covered in blood, a pool of crimson staining the kitchen tiles. The scene was brutal. Lisa had been stabbed multiple times, and the gunshot wound to her head sealed her fate. But what made the discovery even more chilling was the number 304 carved into her abdomen. Rob froze in disbelief, too horrified to understand what he was seeing. Panicking, he immediately called 911. As he awaited the arrival of the police, he noticed Lisa's phone, diary, and personal belongings were scattered around the house, hinting that whoever had committed this crime had not just taken her life, but also rifled through her private items. Rob's mind raced, and although he was in shock, a small part of him wondered if he was the target of the crime. But there was no time to contemplate further. His wife was gone, and the police would soon arrive. As Detective Tiana Williams and her partner, Mark Vidria, investigated the scene of Lisa Turner's brutal murder, they started to narrow down a list of potential suspects. At first, there seemed to be no clear motive. Lisa had been a well-liked, well-respected woman with no apparent enemies. However, as they delved deeper into her personal life, they discovered several startling revelations that began to paint a much darker picture. Jason Brace Collins, a 22-year-old handyman who had been working on repairs around Lisa's home for the past year, was the first person of interest. At first, Jason had been someone everyone thought of as merely a friend to Lisa. However, when the police reviewed Lisa's phone records and text messages, a shocking discovery was made. Lisa and Jason had been having a secret affair for nearly 6 months. The relationship had started innocently enough, with Jason helping Lisa with repairs, but it soon turned emotional, with the affair evolving into something much deeper. Lisa's closest friends described Jason as obsessive and possessive, qualities that became evident through their private exchanges. There were numerous text messages between them, some of which were filled with longing, while others revealed Jason's anger and frustration when Lisa tried to pull away. Jason had become increasingly desperate to make Lisa choose him over her family. As the investigation continued, it became clear that Jason was emotionally unstable, and his inability to accept the end of the affair made him a prime suspect in Lisa's death. Detectives learned that Lisa had recently ended the affair, telling Jason that she was committed to her family. Jason had been unable to cope with the rejection, and investigators believed that he may have resorted to violence out of heartbreak and rage. The fact that the murder was both personal and brutal seemed to align with this theory. Rob Turner, Lisa's husband, was, understandably, devastated by his wife's death. However, as detectives began piecing together their relationship, they discovered that it had not been as perfect as it seemed. Friends and family described Rob and Lisa as a picture-perfect couple, but behind closed doors, there were growing tensions. The couple had been dealing with financial issues, and their once thriving relationship had become strained. Lisa had been emotionally distant in recent months, and Rob had grown frustrated with her. Some of Rob's colleagues even reported that he seemed increasingly irritated by Lisa's behavior, though there was no evidence to suggest he was violent. What made Rob a person of interest was his alibi. He had been away on a business trip at the time of the murder, but could his absence have been a well-crafted alibi? Some speculated that Rob could have orchestrated the murder from afar, or had someone else carry out the crime on his behalf. While there was no direct evidence linking Rob to the murder, his strained relationship with Lisa and the fact that he stood to benefit financially from her death made him a subject of scrutiny. Paula Brace Collins, Jason's mother, was another suspect. Paula had been a longtime friend of Lisa's, and the two women had shared many personal moments over the years. However, it was revealed that Paula had become aware of the affair between Lisa and her son in the months leading up to the murder. Paula's initial reaction was anger, but she never confronted Lisa directly about it. Instead, some close friends of Paula reported that she had been deeply upset and distressed by the situation. Some wondered whether Paula's protective instincts toward her son Jason might have fueled a desire for revenge. Despite the suspicions, Paula had an alibi. She was at her church volunteering during the time of Lisa's murder. However, her emotional involvement and the possibility of maternal overprotection raised doubts in the investigators' minds. Other potential leads. As investigators dug deeper into Lisa's life, they considered other possible leads. They interviewed neighbors, acquaintances, and colleagues, many of whom revealed that Lisa had been embroiled in a minor property dispute with a neighbor. While this seemed like a potential source of tension, there was no evidence to suggest that this had anything to do with her murder. Ultimately, it seemed the most likely suspects were Jason, Rob, and Paula. But as of yet, there was no concrete evidence linking any of them directly to the crime. As the investigation progressed, detectives began to grow frustrated with the lack of solid leads. The case seemed to stall, with no significant evidence pointing to the killer, and Lisa's murder began to fade from public attention. But then, in a twist of fate, a local jogger, Maria Henderson, made a discovery that would change everything. While out on her morning run in a secluded part of a nearby park, she stumbled upon a discarded piece of paper partially buried in the dirt. It was a small, crumpled sheet, and at first glance, it appeared to be a random scrap. But when she flattened it out, she recognized it was a page torn from a personal diary. After quickly handing it over to the police, the diary entry turned out to be a chilling revelation. The page was from Lisa Turner's personal diary, detailing the emotional turmoil she had been experiencing leading up to her death. Lisa had written about her affair with Jason Brace Collins, her feelings of guilt, and most significantly, her growing fear of him. Over the past few months, Lisa had tried repeatedly to end the affair, but Jason's obsessive and possessive nature made it impossible for her to break free. She had written about his increasing attempts to control her, his outbursts of jealousy, and his threatening behavior when she tried to distance herself. One entry was particularly unsettling. It described how Jason had threatened her life if she left him, revealing a level of emotional instability and rage that Lisa had grown terrified of. This diary entry turned out to be the breakthrough the investigation needed. It not only confirmed that Lisa had been in danger, but it also provided a critical clue into her relationship with Jason. The police now had a motive. Jason's possessiveness had likely escalated into violence when Lisa tried to end the affair. The diary became the pivotal piece of evidence that tied Jason more firmly to the crime. Investigators then shifted their focus entirely to Jason, searching for more concrete evidence to back up their suspicions. Within days, forensic analysis delivered a shocking revelation. Investigators found Jason's fingerprints on the murder weapon, an ornate kitchen knife used to stab Lisa, along with traces of gunpowder residue on his clothing. The combination of the physical evidence and the diary entry now pointed unmistakably toward Jason as the primary suspect. The investigators began to assemble a case for his arrest, knowing that they were closing in on the truth. On March 26, 2012, Jason Brace Collins was arrested by the police. The moment the authorities approached him with the evidence, his fingerprints on the knife, the gunpowder residue, and the damning entry in Lisa's diary, his calm exterior faltered. Initially, Jason denied any involvement in Lisa's death, sticking to a story of innocence. He claimed that he had no idea what had happened to her, and that he had not been involved in her murder. However, as investigators continued to present the evidence and break down his alibi, Jason's facade began to crack. The pressure mounted, and eventually, Jason confessed to the murder. He admitted that when Lisa ended their affair, he was consumed by a mixture of rage and despair. He could not handle the idea of losing her, and the emotions that had been building inside him for months finally erupted in violence. He confessed to going to her house on the night of the murder, hoping to convince her to stay with him. But when Lisa refused and told him that she was leaving him for good, Jason snapped. In a fit of uncontrollable rage, he killed her by stabbing her repeatedly and then shooting her. The number 304 carved into her body, symbolizing the twisted attachment he felt to her. During his trial, Jason's defense team tried to argue that he was suffering from undiagnosed mental health issues. They claimed that his emotional instability, which had been exacerbated by his intense feelings for Lisa, led him to commit the murder in a fit of temporary insanity. They also suggested that Jason's bipolar disorder might have played a significant role in his violent outburst. However, the prosecution fiercely rejected this defense, presenting a compelling argument that Jason's actions were premeditated. They showed that he had been obsessively following Lisa in the weeks leading up to her death, and that his jealousy had been growing steadily more dangerous. The evidence, from the diary to the forensic findings, painted a clear picture of a man who had been fixated on Lisa and had lost control when she rejected him. The trial was an emotionally charged affair. Lisa's family and friends were in the courtroom every day, and they listened intently as Jason's actions were laid bare. The revelation that Lisa had been involved in an affair with a man she had tried to break ties with, only to be murdered by him, was devastating to them. Rob Turner, Lisa's husband, struggled to come to terms with the fact that his wife had been unfaithful, and the trial only intensified the pain. The defense's claims of mental instability did little to ease the pain of those who loved Lisa. They could not understand how someone they had once trusted could commit such a brutal and senseless act. After several weeks of trial, the jury finally deliberated and reached a verdict. On May 7, 2012, Jason Brace Collins was found guilty of first-degree murder. The judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For Lisa's family, the verdict brought a small measure of closure, but it could not erase the heartbreak of losing her in such a violent and tragic way. The conviction of Jason Brace Collins brought an end to the legal proceedings, but it did little to ease the emotional turmoil that had enveloped Lisa's family and friends. Rob Turner, Lisa's husband, found himself at the center of a storm of conflicting emotions. On one hand, he felt a sense of justice knowing that Lisa's killer was behind bars. On the other hand, he was left to pick up the pieces of his shattered life. The revelation that Lisa had been having an affair with Jason had left him reeling. The betrayal was almost too much to bear, and Rob struggled to reconcile the woman he had loved with the secrets she had kept hidden. In the months following the trial, Rob sought solace in his daughters. He tried to be strong for them, but the emotional toll of losing Lisa in such a devastating way was always with him. He knew that they would never fully understand the complexity of the situation, but he did his best to raise them with love and support. As part of his healing process, Rob established a scholarship in Lisa's name, hoping to give young women the opportunities for success that Lisa had always wanted. Though it couldn't bring her back, it was his way of ensuring that her legacy would live on in a positive and meaningful way. Lisa's family and friends also struggled with the aftermath. The pain of her loss was compounded by the knowledge that her life had been secretly marred by an affair, and that the man who had killed her had once been a trusted figure in her life. Her friends couldn't help but feel betrayed, and many found it hard to reconcile the image of Lisa they had known with the secrets she had kept. Some found comfort in the scholarship fund, while others struggled to move past the sense of loss that seemed to hang over them. In the broader community, Lisa's murder had a ripple effect. The case had shocked everyone who knew her, and it raised difficult questions about relationships, emotional control, and the dangerous consequences of obsession. Conversations about betrayal, jealousy, and violence became more common in the wake of the trial, and many people found themselves examining their own relationships more closely. The case served as a grim reminder that sometimes the people closest to us can hide the darkest secrets. As the years passed, the emotional scars of Lisa's murder continued to affect those who had been closest to her. For Rob Turner, the pain of losing Lisa never truly faded. He had tried to move forward, focusing on raising his daughters and honoring Lisa's memory through the scholarship, but the hole she had left in his life was always present. He had moments of clarity and peace, but there were also days when the weight of his grief felt unbearable. He continued to visit Lisa's grave, bringing flowers and reflecting on their time together. Though time had passed, the pain of her death, compounded by the revelations of her affair and her murder, was something Rob carried with him forever. Lisa's friends also found it hard to fully heal. They had lost not only a loved one, but also the person they thought they knew. The discovery of Lisa's affair and the brutal way in which she had been killed shattered the image they had of her. Some struggled with feelings of betrayal, while others focused on remembering the good times they had shared with Lisa before the affair had come to light. In the end, they all agreed that her death had left them with more questions than answers, and it was difficult to find peace in the aftermath. Jason Brace Collins, serving a life sentence in prison, became a symbol of the dangers of obsessive love and emotional instability. He had once been a man who seemed harmless, but his actions had shown that beneath the surface, there was a dark side capable of horrific violence. In prison, Jason reportedly showed no remorse for his crime. He spent his days quietly, isolated from the other inmates, perhaps reflecting on the choices that had led him to such a tragic and irreversible end. The case also sparked ongoing conversations in the community about relationships, trust, and the devastating effects of emotional obsession. Lisa's death was a stark reminder of the power dynamics that can exist in relationships, where one person's love and affection can spiral into something dangerous and uncontrollable. Her story served as a cautionary tale, warning people to be more aware of the signs of possessiveness and control in their own relationships. Though the legal process had ended, the impact of Lisa's death and the subsequent trial would continue to reverberate for years. For her family and friends, the wounds would never fully heal, and the trauma of losing Lisa in such a violent way would stay with them forever. The scholarship in her name served as a small beacon of hope in the face of such an overwhelming loss, ensuring that Lisa's memory lived on in a positive way. Yet, the emotional scars of the case, the betrayal, the violence, and the sense of justice that couldn't fully erase the pain would linger long after the courtroom doors had closed. As the dust settles and the story of Lisa's tragic end becomes part of the past, we are left to grapple with the lingering questions that continue to haunt those involved and the larger community. Why did this happen? What makes a person cross the line from love to violence, from obsession to murder? At the core of this tragedy lies a human mystery. What drives someone to commit such an unforgivable act? Was it jealousy, mental instability, or something more? Jason Collins, once trusted and loved, transformed into a figure capable of such a brutal crime. What was it in his psyche that pushed him to this point? How did his feelings for Lisa become so twisted, so consuming, that it ultimately led to her death? For those close to Lisa, the questions don't stop with Jason. What could have been done to prevent this? How could she have known the danger lurking beneath the surface of what seemed to be a simple, secret affair? Could anyone have recognized the signs of emotional manipulation or controlling behavior before it escalated? It's easy to see these events as an isolated, extreme case, but they raise broader concerns. Are we aware enough of the signs of toxic relationships and emotional abuse that may seem innocuous at first, but grow into something far more dangerous? What role do factors like mental health, societal expectations, and personal trauma play in the behavior of someone who might otherwise seem normal? Is it possible to identify and address these issues before they lead to a catastrophic outcome? As viewers, we are left with the uncomfortable reality that anyone could be vulnerable to manipulation, obsession, or violence, and that sometimes the most seemingly harmless people carry dangerous secrets within them. This story forces us to reflect on the complexities of human behavior, the dark undercurrents of emotions, and the delicate balance between love and obsession. The pain and loss experienced by Lisa's family and friends will never go away. But as we reflect on this case, we must also consider, how can we prevent tragedies like this from occurring in the future? What can we do to better understand the signs of unhealthy relationships? And how can we support those who may be trapped in them? Are we doing enough to raise awareness about emotional abuse and its potential consequences? Or do we still have a long way to go before we truly understand the full scope of this problem? In the end, the answers to these questions may never come entirely, but by asking them, we can begin to shed light on the complex human emotions that lead to such devastating acts, and maybe, just maybe, prevent future tragedies.